As a seven-figure agency owner, you know what it's like to be the bottleneck of your own business, where every decision still goes through you and your team stalls out without your input. Today, I interviewed Diane Mora. She's the founder of Zen Change Marketing, and she's been a fractional CMO for over 2 decades with Fortune 100 clients. She's successfully moved from operator to leader in her business, and today she breaks it all down. In this call, you'll learn how to increase your impact while shortening your to-do list. You'll learn what top CEOs do differently and how you can apply that immediately. And you'll learn how to build a team you can trust so the business runs without you. And if you like this content, be sure to like and subscribe to this channel because we'll be bringing more agency founder content to you every week. Enjoy. I was listening to a couple podcasts actually that you were recently on. And you mentioned like you got your start in entrepreneurship selling like school supplies and pencils at the beginning of your career when you were a kid, and your dad was helping you out with that. Is that kind of right?
Yeah, that is right. Well, he was kind of I guess my mentor in a sense as I was starting in my career. I would think I was only 13 when I was going door to door selling pencils, and he taught me about the value of good customer service. And I think, as you heard in the other podcast, I had an issue with I had incorrectly completed the form with some lady's name on the pencils. And so they came back and they were wrong. And she was upset about that. And of course, this was my very first paying customer. And I was somewhat incensed and thought that she should pay to replace the order because, I was 13. What the heck did I know? And so I went back home, and Dad was like, nope, that's not how it works, honey. So he taught me that very hard lesson. So I was in the red on my very first customer, but that
Oh
taught me a
my.
really good lesson about, one is attention to detail, obviously. And then the other is, you're kind of in it for long-term relationships. So you have to, if you mess up, own it, make it right.
Yeah. And I'm sure that reflects in your business now. And I know how important it is to have mentors, especially early on in your life. It sounds like your dad was a business mentor, but also kind of like an emotional and mental sort of mentor as well. Do you feel like he helped you more on the business side or more like mentally, emotionally? And how does that translate into your leadership style now?
I think both of my parents just taught me really good values, and that's I'm very grateful for that. Um, and I think that having that foundation, and then just subsequently going through say the school of hard knocks of corporate America, there were a lot of lessons there. I remember one time I was part of a really large implementation that was rolling out to our clients across multiple locations. I think they had about 5,000 users, and the client insisted that we do it all over a weekend. And we didn't think that was a really good idea, but we didn't push back. And because we didn't push back, it was a predictable disaster. And everyone who had ever worked on that project was called back from wherever they were. I think I was living in Atlanta at the time, and I was called back to the West Coast. And we did what it took. We worked 24/7. We, got the customer back to where they needed to be. But it was a really, really good lesson about, when you know your stuff, and sometimes clients will push you in a particular direction because they want the benefits right away. And you have to, stick to your guns. And if you know that it has a high risk or it's not in their best interest, have the confidence to be that consultant and just say no.
Mm. Yeah. When you've consulted with these Fortune 100 companies, and I know you've had multiple dozens that you've consulted with, I've heard you talk about some of the tendencies and the characteristics and traits of leaders of these big companies. Like they're visionary, but they also have the shiny object syndrome. I think that resonates with a lot of founders and entrepreneurs. But I guess what sort of beliefs or values did you notice in some of these higher level Fortune 100 company leaders that you have adopted and shared with your team?
Well, I think so. In terms of shiny object syndrome, I think that is, I'm not going to say it's unique to founders, but it's a lot more prevalent in particular tech founders. because they like cool stuff. So, they're building a company that does one cool thing, and then they see this other potential for this other cool thing, and they'll tend to pivot. What I've found in my experience with, really good corporate leaders is that they're much more focused. They don't get mired down in the details. They really kind of stay the course. They're typically really good orators. They're able to deliver inspirational messages, and they focus their time on what's important. I remember I had an experience where I was managing a really large client. I think I had about 200 people on my team at that time, and I had recently taken over that client, and there had been some issues. And at one point, one of their senior executives was making noise, and it was, there were some concerns. And I had previously had the opportunity to meet our CEO, and this was like a large corporate company. And so I knew I needed help, but I knew I needed that level of help, because sometimes you need the title to show up regardless of, whatever you're doing as an individual. And so I just reached out. I called him and I said, "Hey, I've got this thing going on with this executive. Would you be available to meet with him?" And he said, "Absolutely." And he drove his car over, I think it was a couple-hour drive, to come and see the client. We had a really good meeting with the client. And as we're waiting to see the client, one of the things that struck me was we're in this little conference room, and he was just asking me questions, talking to me, trying to, learn more about the client, learn more, just different things about, what was going on with our team. And I was thinking to myself, man, you run a company that is, well over $1 billion, and yet you're not texting and looking away from me. You're not taking a call. You're just focused on me. You're in the moment. And I thought that's really, really powerful, because how many of us, and I think especially because we've been trained by social media, we get distracted and we're not in the moment. And so maybe we didn't completely absorb everything in that conversation because we were a little distracted, or we didn't take full advantage of that conversation. There could have been an opportunity in there somewhere that maybe we missed. And so that really struck me. And I later had the opportunity to meet with the founder of BNI, who was Dr. Ivan Meisner. And we had a little, very small group kind of fireside chat with him. And I asked him, I said, "What, in your experience," because, this is a man who has worked with thousands upon thousands of entrepreneurs. I said, what in your experience differentiates the really successful entrepreneurs from the ones who are kind of moderately successful or don't make it?" And he said to me, he said, "Well, it's funny. I was just having that conversation with Richard Branson the other day." And I'm like, "Really?" Really?
Right?
Anyway,
Name drop, name drop.
what would I give to be in that circle? But anyway, and he said that we agreed that the differentiator is the length of your to-do list.
Interesting.
Length of your to-do list is inversely proportional to your success.
Wow.
So
So a shorter to-do list.
your to-do list, because if you've
Wow.
got this massive to-do list, you're not focused, you're not leading, you're doing. I
Mm.
thought that was like, wow, okay, that kind of hits me right in the gut, but I think that's
Yeah.
good advice.
Oh my gosh, that's really powerful. Warren Buffett has I think it's a Netflix documentary, and in one of the scenes I remember they were telling the story where he and Bill Gates, who are friends, were sitting next to each other, and the interview slid them both a piece of paper and said, "Write down on this piece of paper the one word that you think more than anything contributes to your success." And they each wrote their word, folded it up, and handed it back. And when she opened both of them, they both said focus. And that really leads to what you're talking about, a shorter to-do list. You can really feel when somebody has that sort of presence with you and that laser focus.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean,
thank
the
you.
CEO didn't have to be distracted by everything, because his to-do list for that day was work with Diane and let's resolve what's going on with this client. And then he
Yeah.
would drive back, and I'm sure he'd do something else, like prepare for a board meeting or whatever the heck else he was doing. But, in that moment, I was his priority. Our client was his priority, which I thought was
Wow.
really, really cool.
Yeah. Be where your feet are.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
When your team is behind closed doors without you, what do you think they say about you as a leader?
Well, hopefully they don't say bad things. I don't think they do. I mean, we do capture feedback, and we're very open. One of our core values is no BS, and we really mean that. So I'm very open with my team about, if I'm doing something that either you don't feel that was the way that it should have been handled, or you have concerns, it should be different. I mean, I need you to call me on it. So, a lot of good guidance from Brene Brown, if you ever read her stuff, but
Yeah.
I think that's important. So, I hope that they appreciate that I'm trying to give them the opportunity to grow and to lead and to be accountable. And so I'm honestly kind of backing away more and more, because I am seeing them growing into that role, and I'm trying to shorten my to-do list so I can be that leader that gets us to the next level.
I love it. And those go really hand in hand. You're super focused as a leader. You almost have to, by proxy, trust your team with the tasks that they're assigned, or really the responsibilities or the outcomes that you assign to them. And without that trust, like, how are you supposed to scale if you have the death grip on all the operations? I think
Well, and I think
that's
if you don't trust your team, either you're the wrong leader or they're the wrong team.
mm, wow. I'm going to let that sink in for a second. Well, speaking of focus and leadership, you're a fractional CMO for multiple companies at a time. It's got to take intense focus to do that. How do you manage your time and energy when you're fractional CMOing for multiple big companies while running your agency?
Well, I think the fact that my leaders have been able to grow into, stronger management roles and handle all the details definitely helps with the agency piece. So my role within the agency is really helping guide and coach them, helping oversee strategy for our clients. I do have, some of our clients in the agency who have some portion of my time as a fractional CMO as well. And then even those who don't, I'm still kind of checking in and just sort of seeing how things are going and making sure that, everything, that they're happy. And if I see something where, because of maybe some experience that I've had or things that I've seen in industry that would help that client, I might, suggest that to the account manager, or, we bring it up on a call so that, I'm trying to, keep some degree of a hand in with those clients. For the fractional CMO clients, I don't take on a ton of them at once, right? So it's not like I'm trying to do this for 20 clients. I'm doing it for maybe 3 to 5 clients at a time. And so it's easier for me to just always have their interests in the back of my mind. And, as I'm seeing things, so if I learn something new, so as an example, a couple of weeks ago, one of my leaders and I attended Social Media Marketing World out in San Diego, which was a tremendous conference. There was a lot of, obviously they had initially started that conference as very social media focused, and then it became content in general, and now it was all like content and AI. There was a massive AI track in
Wow.
there as well. And so there was a lot of really good insights. And so as I'm listening to all of this, I'm kind of listening through the filter of my CMO clients as well, as to, that's a really cool thing. We could apply it to this client, or, so, really looking to bring those learnings back. I try to keep on top of, trends that are going on in each of their industries, so that, I can think about what are the implications to your strategy? What are some things that we could be doing to help you to grow? So it's not, I think it's a lot easier. It's obviously good time management, but it's a lot easier because it's almost, I kind of look at it like, I only have one child, but if you had multiple kids, you can kind of keep 3 to 5 kids in mind at any given time, right? As a parent. So,
Yeah.
you can keep 3 to 5 clients at that level in mind and make sure that you're really delivering on the strategy for them.
Yeah. And I know you're going to be going into a deeper explanation of how you approach those relationships, how you put yourself into a fractional CMO role. I'm really excited to get into that, but that will be exclusively for the Agency Owner Network community. So I'll leave it there.
To sign
I
up
have a
now.
exactly. Thank you. I didn't say it. I didn't say it. When you're looking to work with, well, before I go on, I think it would be interesting to hear, like, when you see your position either as a founder or a CMO or a fractional CMO, how would you describe that role to someone who has no idea what it is?
It's a growth strategist, because that's the commonality, right? When it comes to my agency, I'm looking at, how can we, first of all, are there ways that we can become more efficient, right? So, I mean, my agency is all over AI. We have meetings every week. We have a task force that's testing out different tools. We each take action items every week to either test something new, decide is something in or out, follow up on particular announcements, make sure that we're sharing insights from different podcasts or different sources. So we're very much on top of that, as much as anybody can be on top of AI these days because it's changing so rapidly. But
Crazy.
I mean, one of the things that I thought was really interesting was when we were at the conference a couple of weeks ago, and in the opening keynote, the speaker asked how many people in the room, and this is mostly, they're all people in marketing, right? So they're either going to be agency owners, or they might be in corporate marketing, or they're in different marketing roles, but senior enough that they're going to go to a conference.
Mhm.
And he asked, how many of you are using AI daily in your work? And only a third put up their hand, which really surprised me.
Really?
Your work, right? So it doesn't mean you're not,
Whoa.
you might be asking ChatGPT some fun questions. That's one thing, right? But how many of you are using it daily in your work? Now, it may be that there was more of the corporate people might be a little bit behind, because which actually presents a great opportunity for agency owners who are like all over it, because corporate doesn't move as fast. I can tell you that from many years of
Yeah.
experience in corporate. It's tougher because they have, all of the, any new application that you bring in, you have to go through IT. It has to pass like all the security requirements, and then they have to roll it out, and it's a project. Whereas, if you are an SMB, you can just do it. And it's one of the things that I love about this space so much, because I used to get very frustrated in corporate when I would see, here's this thing we should be doing. Here's, the way that we could make the client's experience better. And it was this whole thing to roll it out. Whereas now we could just
Mm.
get together as a leadership team and say, makes sense? Yep, let's do it. So I think that's a really good opportunity right now for agency owners to help, because it's also possible potentially that, depending on how they, as long as they're managing the security properly, but they may be able to help support some corporate clients with things that corporate can't do themselves just yet. So yeah, so I mean, I think sorry, you want to go back to your question because I went down a rabbit hole.
No, these are great insights. I was just curious how you would kind of describe your role as a fractional CMO or as a founder, to someone who doesn't know what either of those things are, doesn't know what a growth strategist is. You might put like, I make big decisions really fast for clients that manage billions of dollars or something like that.
Yeah. So it's I think for my agency, I try to be the kind of the visionary, the guiding force, the sounding board, because I'm a little bit removed from all of the day-to-day completing of tasks. I'm able to kind of look across some things and identify, is there a disconnect over here? Or is there something that I remember was important to the client here that we need to make sure has filtered down into the content that we're delivering, for example. And then on the fractional CMO side, I'm either doing that for a client's marketing team, because when I'm a fractional CMO, it could be, it's going to go, there's three essential models. At the very small level, I might just be kind of like a coach and confidant for the CEO, which really I should be anyway. And in that role, and some, like I had a client who hired me, and he said, look, he said, I feel like I need someone senior to just bounce ideas around with, to strategize with. My team is too junior. So I want to hire you to be that. So I do engage with his team, but I'm not directly managing his team. I'm kind of more coaching them, helping them, and then, supporting him and providing guidance and doing so, being that, that person who can kind of look more broadly and say, hey, there's this trend going on. Let's look at this. How are we going to grow here? How are we going to incorporate AI into your team? And then, sharing some tools, pointing them in the right direction. And I can share once we get into the detail list and more specifics as to, what that looks like. But that's kind of the one level, is I'm really primarily working with the CEO. And then at the next level, I might be working with the CEO, and I am the CMO of the company, and therefore I'm managing their team. So for all intents and purposes, they report to me, and I do everything that I would if I was a full-time CMO. Only, as I like to say, for the price of a middle manager, you get a fractional CMO, which is basically part-time. And then the other level is really when both myself and my agency kind of plug in to that client and become their outsourced marketing department. So now I'm the CMO. I'm managing either, we have, my team, who is obviously, we have our own leaders, but, I'm leading them and potentially leading members of the client team, depending on what that makeup is, or not. And obviously I'm not, charging the client to manage my own people, but it's more just kind of the strategy connections. So that would be the kind of the third level. So that's, it really depends on which model that we've agreed to, what the specifics of my day-to-day are. But in all cases, it's going to be the confidant to the CEO, the strategist. I'm looking at the marketing KPIs. I'm looking at the funnel. I'm making sure that whatever however the team is comprised, that they're delivering results. I'm looking at the market. I'm looking at competitors. I'm, looking at what some other leading edge companies are doing, and there's some lessons that we want to take from that, both within the industry and outside. So yeah, it's a lot of consultant strategy work.
Yeah. It's a lot of people relationship management. And I think what I see from founders who are still kind of in the mid six figures and they're looking to break through to the seven figures, those are the lessons that they're learning. Is it's less about the doing and more about the collaborating and the seeing the vision and then implementing that with a relationship with another people. And the social skills, or you mentioned some of these great leaders are great orators, and that's just communicating what's in your mind to someone else so that they understand it and can actually take action on it, which I guess leads me to this question. When you're looking for a partner or a joint venture, or even someone to white label, but more so in the partnership joint venture space, what are some traits that you look for in the person other than a track record?
Shared values, it's a bit like finding a partner, like in the romantic sense, right? I mean, you're looking for someone who shares your values and, has especially the same view of client service. I mean, we have some I mentioned no BS. We have adopted, I don't know if you've heard of one of Amazon's core values, which is bias for action.
Yeah.
Which basically means, it's kind of another way of saying, and don't take this the wrong way, but kind of like perfection is the enemy of the good. Sometimes you can just spin so much on something and you just need to realize it's like having an MVP in tech, right? I mean, do you wait until the application is absolutely perfect, but then did you miss the market in the process, or do you put something out and iterate? So that's kind of really what that's all about. And we're very conscious of when a client asks for something, we move and we get it done. We're very responsive. I think that's one of the universal things that we get from, or messages that we get from all of our clients. And because, we care, we're kind of putting ourselves in their shoes, and we understand, if they have some particular deadline or an event, or there's something that they're trying to get done, we get that, we internalize that. And so our team really does try to help them. So I need any partner to work like that.
Mm-hmm.
And, it may be a case where they are, we actually recently partnered with somebody in the group as well, but some cases they may help sell. In other cases, maybe they'll just deliver. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. And then what we bring to the table with a partnership as well as a JV is, I think one of the things that we were always hearing from, Neil and Eric and from others is that, especially right now where there's AI, the combination, the perfect storm of like AI and the economy sort of shaking everything up, it's driving a lot of change, it's driving a lot of uncertainty. And what will bubble to the surface in terms of the most effective marketing tactics is still a little TBD. And so if you're an agency and you're single threaded, you deliver one type of service, let's say you just do SEO, there's some risk there, because if there's a lot of upheaval happening in SEO. We talk about brand searches being one of the key drivers of SEO these days. Well, brand searches, a lot of that's coming from social media. So now if you're an SEO agency and you don't do social media, you're missing out on a piece. Or maybe, one of the things that we've recently branched into is being able to deliver very customized AI chatbots for clients. So, we're like, as always, like, I know I've used this expression a lot, but sometimes, if you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So if you're an SEO agency, then SEO is what the client needs. Maybe that's not what the client needs. Or maybe they need it, but it's just not phase one. Maybe it's phase two, but now you don't have that flexibility. So, that's one of the key reasons why, we decided to go to market as a full service agency. So we can do everything from, strategy, social, email, PPC, build and maintain websites, SEO, the whole 9 yards. We may or may not need some assistance from partners to do some of that, depending on the size of the project, but, that's how we go to market. So it allows us the latitude to craft the right strategy for the client in order to deliver results. So if your agency is not in that position because you are single threaded, you have really two choices. Either build it yourself, which is going to be a total pain in the butt, right? It's like this whole new area you're going to have to learn. You got to make sure you hire the right people, because probably whoever you have on your team aren't the ones to do it. And now as a leader, you have to, your breadth is, I mean, it could be a lot. And a lot of the agencies at that size are founder-led sales. So the more that you're building up, let's say you don't do social media, now you have to build up that capability. You're not selling. And right now, in this, you need to be selling a lot.
Yeah.
So if you could partner, and it doesn't have to be a forever partnership, right? You could partner and learn how it's done through a partner, and then you can decide, do I want to build this, or do I want to just continue to work with the partner? And meanwhile, you're selling, you're leading strategy, you're doing all the things that you should be as a founder. Because it's kind of a big deal to start a new, either launch into a new industry or launch into a new service area.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, I guess that segues into the last question that I wanted to ask as we wrap up here. What brings you to the Agency Owner Network? What's valuable about it for you?
Well, you know what I found really interesting, I know I've mentioned this to you, is that since I launched my agency about 12 years ago, any of the networking groups that I was a part of were category exclusive, or they were just surface level. So, I mean, if you join a chamber, which, I haven't really gotten much out of chambers, to be honest, they're very surface level, and there'll be 10 people in the room doing what you do. And so it just kind of feels a little weird. It feels like you're all competitors. If you join a category exclusive networking group, that can be great. And that's very focused on driving leads. but then there's nobody in that group who like really gets what you do. You can join a mastermind. I'm part of a mastermind. It's category exclusive. It's great. It's helpful for, general like leadership, HR, those types of things, general strategy. But nobody's running an agency. Nobody's a CMO. Nobody gets my world. So when you're in the agency owner network, I think the difference is that you're with people who get you. And what I found to be very refreshing and surprising is that everyone is very open to share. They'll get into the details of, oh, here's how I do this. Here's how I've made this type of client successful. People will share like, oh, I'm having a hard time. I'm struggling with this particular client to try to get some traction. What should I do? Well, now you've got a whole bunch of seasoned agency owners saying, oh, well, have you tried this? Look at this. And that is invaluable. So it's honestly the first time in all my career that I've been in a group that that has other people in it who, in theory, could be competitors, except we don't behave like it.
Yeah, yeah, I love that, and yeah, thank you for sharing your experience. That's what I'm excited to be building, because I know that is the challenge. There's kind of two groups. There's like the CEO, like the YPO or EO groups that are all about high level leadership, and then there are marketing communities where you can learn the strategies and the tactics, but there's really no combination of the two. And I feel like that's what the network is about, and that's who it's for. So. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing your expertise. How can people reach you? What's the best way to connect with you?
So they can either hit me up on LinkedIn. So it's Diane Mora, which is Diane, last name Moura. Or if they want to go to our website, zenchange.com, and then I'll show you my other website when we get into the agency owner network specific part of this section and why I do it.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Diane. This is a pleasure. If you're a seven-figure agency owner and you want to join the network that Diane and many other successful founders are a part of, you can always go to agencyowner.network/join. Thanks, Diane.